Good morning. Lovely to be back. I know this is our last shir of the Zman, but let's move ahead. So we saw we want to try and finish off the tshuvas of Rav Moshe on the subject. So Rav Moshe wrote within a span of 3 months. He wrote three tshuvas on the topic of what he called Chalav companies. We did the first one, which was Siman Mem Zayin. And then there's 2 more tshuvas, Siman Mem Ches and Mem Tes. And here he introduces some new ideas. The first one here is, sorry?
Back to the Shittim Master.
Yes, Siman Mem Ches and Siman Mem Tes. So the Shoyl came back to him in Siman Mem Ches and said, but the fine... The fine that you receive for adulterating the milk is very small. $25. We need the previous one, the tshuvas of Rav Moshe, which is what we were doing. So we're going to look quickly at the second and third tshuvas of Rav Moshe, Mem Ches, Siman Mem Ches and Mem Tes, and then given you a new bundle on top of that as well. So in Mem Ches, the first objection was that the fine is very little. Leave the door open if you don't mind. We'll get some air. Shkoyach. So he said the fine is very little, and furthermore, he said says Rav Moshe, the main point is that they have no incentive to adulterate the milk. So what? The fine is only $25 or $100. But the main point here is that they have no incentive. Why would they put in the milk of a horse or a cow? It makes no sense. And furthermore, says Rav Moshe, they would then need to bribe people at every level in the chain. You need to bribe the workers, and why would somebody do that? There's zero incentive to do that, and that is his main point here in Siman Mem Ches. And therefore he says that the Anan Sahadi, which we discussed, that remains, and we have a yediyah, as far as we're concerned, that there is no cholav there, and that is good enough. Then the Shoyl suggested, I'm summarizing this tshuva because we're not going to have time, because we've got other stuff we need to do to finish off at least this piece. The Shoyl suggested that maybe we need Eidim Lekiyum Hadova. Look on where it says Umasherotza Kvod Teirosoi. Yes, in Siman Mem Ches, the second page. Umasherotza Kvod Teirosoi. Hello? Anybody home?
Yeah, just
Umasherotza, that's right. Umasherotza Kvod Teirosoi Loima She'ulai Yitzrichu Davke Kinek Kegeder Eidim Lekiyuma. Maybe Chazal need required Eidim Lekiyum Zedova Shalei Nitten Lehei Omer. No way. He says, even the Mordechai, who says that even if there's no horses or camels in the farm, you still need the Yid to sit outside. Hari al Koponim, but the Mordechai only says that he needs him to sit outside. He doesn't require him to watch. So there's definitely no requirement for Eidus L'Kiyam Adovar. And therefore, he says, go down here, the penultimate paragraph. V'lochein teshuvasi harishayna sheyesh tam godel amikilin u'nechayna u'brura aval vadail balei nefesh min aroi lahachmir. A bal nefesh, of course, should be machmir. More about that later. Then we go to the third and longest tshuva on the topic, and here it gets complicated. Why it gets complicated, Siman Mem Tes, which is the third and final tshuva in this series of 3 tshuvas which he wrote within 3 months on this topic. And here the Shoyl introduced a piece of information which we did not have until now. What was that information? He says the system is that lots of little farms bring their milk to a central farm, a central distribution point, and it is at that point, at the central distribution point, that government oversight takes place.
not before.
But not before. And therefore, the Shoyl says we have a problem, surely. Because who knows what happens at these micro farms? And I use that word deliberately. I don't know if we're going to get time to do it today, but there was a meeting in 2013 of the various kashrus agencies, English and American. Dangeli was there, Rav Heinemann was there, the OU was there, where they were discussing milk that came from Indian micro farming, and that was discussed. Hopefully we'll get time to come back to that.
From the country of India?
Yes. We'll get back to that. But the concept, we're not talking about the shaitels, we're talking about the milk. But the concept of coming from multiple small farms to a central distribution point, how do we know what happened there? And this is where Rav Moshe, it's a long tshuva, I'm going to summarize. And Rav Moshe says as follows. He first demonstrates that the Machlekes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, and here's where some of the Achronim, they don't challenge Rav Moshe, but we need to be aware, Rav Moshe now uses the Lomdus, he borrows the Lomdus from Gvinas Akum, and uses it now in the milk of Akum, which is itself quite interesting. And what does he say? The Machlekes between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, where Rabbeinu Tam says that, of course, nobody's going to be stupid enough to put in Dover Tome because it isn't ma'amid. That's what they say about cheese. Mm-hmm. The shaila is, are we chayash that maybe he milked it for drinking and then changed his mind? That's the Machlekes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Says Rav Moshe, even though nobody would be ma'amid it, Rashi to then use it for cheese.
Even though it's not possible.
When milk, what status does it get? If it was milked, or are we chayash that the fact, in other words, you can't just look at the end product. Rabbeinu Tam says, just look at the end product. That's all we need to care about. The end product is cheese. That means I don't need to worry that maybe he milked it for milk and changed his mind and then used it for cheese. That's what Rabbeinu Tam says. Rashi says you do need to be concerned. You need to know that when he milked it, he was milking it for cheese. Because if he milked it for milk and then possibly changed his mind, then there may be problems of tzich chalav, etc. That is the chashash.
So what is about change his mind? In which sense? He changes
his mind as to what to use the milk for.
For drinking or making.
Drinking or for making cheese. The chashash is maybe the goy, according to Rashi. He milked it for milking, then mixed it with other milk, and the whole thing generally is mamid, but there might be a little bit of a runoff of some of the other non-kosher milk. Do we need to worry about that? Is that what the tzich chalav is? That's the Machlekes Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. Says Rav Moshe, now we're talking about milk, we're not talking about cheese. What's the relevance over here? Says Rav Moshe, you see that the gzeira is only from the moment, and this is perhaps the big chiddush of this tshuva, that we're only worried, the gzeira only starts from the moment it comes into my hand. What happened beforehand is really interesting. And yesh makom lachloik, but Rav Moshe says we only need to be concerned from the moment the Jew receives the milk. It comes in, therefore, from the small farms. From the moment I receive the milk, there's government inspection. Therefore, you don't need to worry about what happened beforehand. That's what Rav Moshe says. And that is the main thrust of his argument here. And let's look at it inside from, we can't go through the whole thing. Let's look at it from,
Like Rabbeinu Tam.
Yes.
That sounds like it could be a sugyan like kavur kemerza merza and the
possibly
stuff with the where
could
it comes
be
from and stuff.
could be
Maybe.
that's possible. Go to the last page. The imkain eina klum. You could be, yeah.
Which page?
The last page of the Igros Moshe. And it's the second paragraph, which starts with the words Ve'im Kain. Got it? Ve'im Kain.
Page pages.
Show it, give me.
Last
page. The last page of Rav Moshe. The last page, Ve'im Kain. There we go. Ve'im Kain.
There was an error.
Yeah? Ve'im Kain einoi klum. Therefore, says Rav Moshe, Einoi klum masha ha-companies loichim gam chalav mi-farms shehem loi mirtasi kulahai. The company buys the milk, gets in the milk from these small farms. Maybe those other small farms are not so concerned, they're not going to be worried. The alcohol ponim kiven shalei nasa ha-issa etzlam. The issa doesn't happen with them. Uliyad ha-Yisroel ba meha company shemirtasi. The Jew, where do we receive the milk from? From the companies, Chalav companies. This is R Moshe. We get the milk from the companies. And the companies are mirtasi, because there's licensing, there's regulations, there are fines, even though it's not so much. And therefore, that ein le'eser. It's quite a big chiddush. For that reason, we don't find those that are makel on butter to say, you're only allowed to buy butter from somebody who made the butter themselves, but not from a goy who buys the chalav and then makes butter out of it, even though you might be concerned that maybe the fellow who milked it put in a little bit of chalav tomei, because he himself is not making the butter. We look at the tarovus, and if that isn't osur midina, only mitzad the gzeira, legozru leser keshehu biyad akum. There was no gzeira to forbid it at the point when it was biyad akum, only when it was biyad Yisroel. And we get it from the companies. And that's all we need to be concerned about. It is a chiddush. V'lachein, kiven sheliyad ha-Yisroel bo ha-chemo, af shehu me'akum sheni, nidain rak bedin akum ha-sheni, shehu einoi shoyta la'arev. Therefore, all I need to look at is, who did I get it from? I got it from somebody who is making butter. He's not going to be stupid enough to put in something where it's not going to make butter. And the same thing over here. I get it from the companies. The companies are not going to be stupid enough to put in something where they can lose their license or get fined and lose their reputation, and therefore Reb Moshe holds it is mutter. That's the bottom line. Yesh tam godel lahamekilen. So if you go a little bit further, go to the last paragraph. Last paragraph. Hinin is bayra inyan heitev. Sheyesh tam godel lahamekilen b'cholav companies v'shehadini mohem. Ach vadai. Min horoi lebali nefesh lahachmir al atzmon kedekosavti b'michtavi harishon. Okay, and that is where we are leaving it. Those are the three tshuvas from Reb Moshe. Now, here we need to take this a little bit further, and here I've given you a new bundle. Now you can start. Mayesh. Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Now I've given you a new bundle for today because I'm going to share with you something which I think is less well known. The first thing we're going to look at is we're going to do it a bit backwards, sorry. Skip over the first double page to start with, and we will go to the second page, which is a tshuva later in Reb Moshe, Igros Moshe, Siman Lamed Hey. Yes? The shaila was as follows. This was written in 1970. And the shaila is a school. Second page. You got it?
Yeah, Lametei.
Lametei, Sim Lametei. Bidvar cholav companies shebimedina seinu, shebiarti besifrei Igros Moshe. I explained in Igros Moshe, sheleka issa cholav shechol vayakum, there's no issa of cholav, shechol v'ein Yisrael, avol mikol makaim, min ha'ro'oi lebal nefesh lahachmir. Shemitaan zeh, that for this reason, vadai ro'oi liminahale yeshivas ketanos. It is definitely appropriate for those that are running yeshivas ketanos sheyitnu letalmidim cholav shel elu hacompanies shemamidin Yisrael liras hachaliva. It is definitely appropriate that those who are running schools, that's what they call them in America. Yeshivas ketana doesn't mean a yeshiva ketana like in Israel, a 16-year-old boy learning. This means a day school, right? Yeshiva ketana. It's a primary school, yeah. Mm-hmm. A school for little children. They definitely should be provided with Chalav Yisroel. Va'af shehu b'yokem ma'at, even though it's a bit more expensive. Shela ha'yeshiva oile zesach godel b'meshach hashana. For the budget of the yeshiva, this is going to be a major budgetary increase over a year. Uvahamatzav shela ha'yeshivas dochuk b'shonim elu. And really, the financial situation, surprise, if of the yeshivas, of the schools, is dochuk. Shebishvil zu mekilim be'ezu yeshivas. So some yeshivas, some schools, Rav Moshe is reporting, some schools rely on his own heta. Says Rav Moshe, mikol mokoim, kedai lahachmir, ki gam zehu me'inyonei chinuch v'limud. This is part of the chinuch. sheyedu, they should know, shebavadai v'ro'oi libnei Torah lahachmir. Now here is the first time he uses, to the best of my knowledge, until now he spoke about Balei Nefesh, here he uses a term, bnei Torah. Bnei Torah should be machmir, af kashiyesh rak chashash issa. Even though there's only a chashash, and me'ika hadini holds its mutter. But bnei Torah should be machmir. So if a Ben Torah would have gone to ask Rav Moshe, should I buy the Chalav companies? You see clearly Rav Moshe would say no. And he's treating all of the children in the schools in the Yeshiva Ketana as bnei Torah. From this they should realize how afraid you have to be of things which are asur. What is the whole point of the budget of the yeshiva? The whole point is to bring up a doyer of people who are ne'eman LaHashem. When it comes to inyonim of chinuch, you don't skimp on the budget. If you are running a school in a place where really out of town, where there is no local Chalav Yisroel, and it's really difficult, or possibly very expensive, I'm going to add. Because he said it was oile ma'at. It was a little bit more expensive, but in the budget, the total of the year, it becomes very expensive. But if you're living in a really out-of-town place and you have to courier it in, or it's going to be like what we have to pay here for Chalav Yisroel, where it's going to be significantly more expensive, I'm adding that, but you can see it's the same thing. Dova kosher ma'oid, then afli yichidim ein lehem lahachmer. Then even for individuals, you don't need to be machmer. Interesting, he only said it for individuals.
Why does he say
it's
even
mashma.
for individuals? I thought he holds...
He says, so then even for individuals, you don't need to be machmer. Why does he say even?
Yeah, right, because he holds that collective is more machmer.
Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't have a good Gabi. Your ha'ara is a very good ha'ara. Why does Rav Moshe say even for Yechidim you don't? Maybe he means even Yechidim means the Bnei Torah.
Okay.
Yechidim means the people that are not the regular run-of-the-mill crowd. It means Bnei Torah. And he's already said, basically, that we treat the schools as Bnei Torah. So it sounds like even for the schools, you wouldn't need to be machmir. So there is one mufurasha tshuva from Rav Moshe. Okay? Now, let's go back to what you've got on page 1. And now we will see 2 more tshuvas from Rav Moshe, which, to the best of my knowledge, are not included anywhere in Igros Moshe. Sorry? First page. Go back to the first page. Go back to the first page. This is a tshuva he wrote in 1957 to Rabbi Avram Weinfeld. Shalom Rav ubrocha kol hayomim. Hine bidvar chalav companies shebimedinoseinu. Vadai yesh tamim lahatir loymar she'enam bichlalo isur. Of course, there is plenty reason to say that they are not included in the Isur Shasru Chazal, Kidde Chazinon, as we see, Sheharbe Mekilin Bazeh Mipnei Hadoichek, Beharbe Mekomis. We see many people are lenient because of the difficulty to get Chalav Yisroel in many places. Aval B'mokim She'ef Shelahasik, says Reb Moshe. However, this is an unpublished tshuva, it's unpublished in Igros Moshe. But in a place where you can get hold of it, Af She'oile Biktsas Tircha Yoser. Even if it comes at a bit more difficulty to get hold of it, va'af b'yoker ma'at, and even if it's a bit more expensive, Chalav Yisroel, ein min haroi lahokel bazeh, utzrichin lahasig Chalav shel Yisroel. And here, notice, he doesn't say Yechidim or Bnei Torah or anything. This is for everybody. Anybody that can get Chalav Yisroel, that is a bit more expensive or a bit more difficult to get, Rav Moshe Paskins, you have to get it. This is a tshuva, an unpublished tshuva from 1957. I don't know why it's unpublished. It's a good question. And here we come to another tshuva of Rav Moshe, which is also unpublished. And this is from 1964. Okay? And he writes as follows. Next, over the page. Next page. On the left-hand side, you've got unless you're very good at deciphering his language, his handwriting. Bidvar Chalav companies. אף שיש טעמים להוקל, ודאי שהוא רק במוקם של לקח חלב ישראל, שהוא תחת השגחת רבונים יראי השם. Rab Moshe clarifies that his tshuva to be makel on Chalav Stam is limited to a case where there is no, you can't get hold of Chalav Yisroel. But where there is Chalav Yisroel, shehu behashgacha ukedayma kol inyonei chalav tzarich lahachmir. You have to be machmir. Again, black on white. Rab Moshe, if you live in London, New York, somewhere where there is Chalav Yisroel, there is no heter for somebody, says Rab Moshe. You can't rely on me to have Chalav Stam, and you can get a gozi bars or whatever they're called, Pesach Zman, what's it, Encore, come on, give me some more, Milk Munch, and all these naughty things which are delicious, and Chalav Yisroel, and all this thing. There is, it seems to be, according to Rab Moshe, zero heter to buy a Mars bar in London. Let's be very clear. Rab Moshe says where you can get Chalav Yisroel, Tzorich lahachmir.
What about you? Why the Rav is not mentioning Berlin?
Because I'm not sure that Berlin is, at what point is it B'yoka Rav or thing? I'm talking about certainly, let's take it one stage at a time.
Okay.
We're not done yet. Good question.
Maybe the difference between having access to fresh kosher, fresh Chalav Yisroel
Let's-
and ultra pasteurized.
Let's come to that. Okay, let's see. Inochanama, that could be. But one thing is for sure. Let's just get the first thing. You live in New York, you live in any
place
centre,
where-
Antwerp, London, any place where there is Chalav Yisroel and Chalav Yisroel products, you have no right to rely on Rab Moshe. Rab Moshe himself writes, you can't rely on him. This needs to be, I don't think this is something that is understood and mefursam well enough. It's mefurish here.
That also means to buy like in London, and if you were to eat Chalav Stam, Chalav Yisroel usually, and then you buy like an OU and OUD, and you're living in London.
Well, if that is Chalav Stam, then yes, same thing. Yeah, Chalav Stam, it's not Chalav Yisroel. There's no heter to. Rab Moshe is saying very clearly that does not. Let's be very clear. He may hold its mutter, may ikar hadin.
Yeah.
But sorich lahachmir. Look at his language. Rab Moshe was very careful. Sorich. You can't just buy it blithely and say, oh, I rely on Rab Moshe.
Yeah.
No, Rab Moshe tells you that if you live somewhere where it is available, where Chalav Yisroel and Chalav Yisroel products are available, you have to have Chalav Yisroel. Sorich lachmer. V'kol shekei. Let's go on. V'kol shekei elu shebeboteihem nizharim lechel rak mechalav Yisroel shebahashgacha shetzrichin lizoyer shehu gam mechashash inyan nadarim. And all the more so if you are a family where you are generally makpid, then you have another reason to be makpid, then it becomes like a neder, as we saw the Chasam Sofer, right? You've got another aspect there as well. And therefore, umimele gamba hospitals, hospitala, hamisnagim, b'macholi bos kosher, sheyesh lehem lesakin ma she'efsha, lehem bazel hasik macholi choliv shebahashgacha. So it looks like this was a tshuva written for hospital meals or stuff like that, and he is saying Poi b'New York leka b'zeh shum doichik, and it definitely needs to. They definitely need to get hold of Chalav Yisroel. Okay, so we have Rab Moshe a tshuva for the Moshe Sachinuch, where he says really B'nai Torah anyway have to be machmir. We have another tshuva from him where he says that if it's a little bit more expensive and you can get it, a little bit more tircha, a little bit more expensive, you do have to get it. And a third tshuva where he writes that where it is available, where Chalav Yisroel is available, there is no heter to have Chalav Stam. Let's keep going, we're not done yet. Let's keep going.
No. We didn't read the last sentence of the
So there, he's talking back to the hospitality or the hospital, or the places where they are. He says at the very least they are obligated to provide that for families that are machmir for themselves anyway, and not to force them. Again, Eli, what he's saying is as follows. It looks like the context of this tshuva is people who are providing meals for hospitals. Yes? And he is paskening for them that they have to provide, presumably it's more expensive, but they have to provide, they should be providing Chalav Yisroel. But he says, but definitely for those that already have a minhag for themselves to be makbid on Chalav Yisroel, you for sure have to. That's what he's saying. That's for sure. So his das is very clearly, you should be providing Chalav Yisroel in a place where it is available. And Kal V'chomer for those that are anyway machmir for themselves. Yeah. Now let's move on to another tshuva from R Moshe, which is in Chelek Ches, Siman Ches, Siman Hey. Yeah. Chelek Ches, Siman Hey. Top of the left-hand column, it says Siman Hey.
Yeah.
You got it? Hidur lehishtamesh b'chalav Yisrael. It doesn't have a date. This one doesn't have a date. Oh, it does. At the end of the page, it's in Tammuz 1968. Okay. Hine. Bidvar hacholov sheze harba shonim sheyirei Hashem asher b'Toronto nizdarzu beheskem arabonim v'chol hacharedim lemitzvos v'hatoyre v'takonos chazal v'ro sheyeh chavra should be a company lecholov shenechel v'al pi hashkochos Yisrael. So in 1968, there already was Chalav Yisroel in Toronto. Yeah? Not bad. V'chein kol advarim anase micholov ki gvina v'chema v'shamenet micholov zal pi hashkochos Yisrael v'ato nisrashel hadovar, but now it's become a bit of a shvacha maisas, as we say, right? Machmas mitzad she'ola b'yokamat. Then there was inflation. 1968, there was inflation, and it's become a bit nitrashel. People are not so makbid anymore. V'harba lekchim cholav mistam chaveiros, and it's now a new thing. A new trend has started in Toronto where people are starting to go back to buying the Chalav companies. And he's going to comment on that. Okay? That's the context. Ibra. It is true. This is consistent with his own position. It is true that there are reasons to be makel with milk that you buy from companies. B'medina, asher medina ha-medina, also limka chalav, sheyesh bo irov chalav tamei. It is true. In a company, in a country where there are rules, and it is forbidden to sell milk that is mixed in with something else, that there are, and this, and look in the brackets, brackets is not R Moshe himself, he says this, the R Moshe has already explained in the various tshuvas that we had before, right? Who rak b'shas hadchak, says R Moshe, when can you buy? Back to can you see what's happening here? There's little brackets, and then it goes back to the big letters are is the letters of his own tshuva. So he says, I wrote that you can buy chalav of companies who rak b'shas hadchak. Here we have a new term R Moshe is introducing. We've had until now Bal Nefesh lahachmir. We've had Bnei Torah should be machmir.
So the inflation.
We've had
inflation is not shas.
He hasn't said that.
Okay.
He hasn't said. I don't know. He hasn't said that yet. All he's saying at this stage is that which I wrote, that it's okay to buy chalav companies. That is only b'shas hadchak. That's when you can buy chalav of companies.
Yeah.
B'shas hadchak. Look in the brackets. He said he brings what we've brought already, Bal Nefesh to be machmir, Manalim of yeshivas, etc., etc. Go right down to the bottom. Ach, im gamba Toronto, Ika isur midine hatoira v'loi bishvil yoker muat. So even in Toronto, where there is an Issa Medina Hamadina, in other words, there are government rules like there are in America, it's still it's not good enough. Not just because of a little bit more extra, that's not good enough. Yeah? Ubiprat elu shekvanogu harbashonim shloi lism chalatamim. And kal v'chomer, those people who've already had the minhag for many years, they were only makbid only to have Chalav Yisroel. Elo al hashkochos Yisroel kedin she'aleim yesh isur midin neder tehanhoga harbashonim over the page. They've got midin neder because they were noiheg to be machmir. Why? What's the matter? They were noyeg to be machmir for many years, to be din neder.
איזה להם? על מה נדר?
Hanhoga Toiva is a din of a neder, mefurish in Shulchan Aruch, bekama mekoimas. We saw this already in the Chasam Sofer. If you take on a Hanhoga Toiva, you need Hataras Nedarim to stop it.
אם אני שותה קפה כל יום, ומחר אני רוצה לשתות תה.
זה לא הנהוגה טויבה. אנחנו מדברים על הלכה, אנחנו מדברים על דובר טויב, על משהו בהלכה וביראת שמיים, שזה מעליותה. לא סתם, אתה, if you drink Fanta, you don't need to have a Torah and Dom to drink Coke. ברור שלא. מדברים על, כי זה ההלכה. To be makpid on Chalav Yisroel, זה minhag toiv. It's a malusa in an hidur in halacha, has a minhag toiv, has a din, of halacha v'neder, you need hataras nedarim. זה מפורש בגמרא בשולחן ערוך בכמה מקומות.
אני לא אומר חס וחלילה שזה לא הלכה, אבל אני פשוט תמה על איך זה יכול להיות שלשתות משהו, חלב זה הופך להיות פתאום נדר.
ברור, כי זה מנהג טוב להחמיר, כי מעיקר הדין Rav Moshe holds its mutter, but I am makbid. I wanted a higher standard of kashrus. I am machmir. And therefore, for years, there were families in Toronto. This is what he's talking about. There were families in Toronto that for many years were machmir, and my family personally, we don't have Chalav Stam. I am makbid. If I, for some reason now, wanted to have Chalav Stam and be soimach on whatever, I would need Hataras and Dorim. I would personally need Hataras and Dorim, because for me, it's become a minhag tov. And that's any minhag tov. If you, L'moshel, let's think of something. I don't know. L'moshel.
Only where it's cotton over undershirt.
Yeah, it has to be. No, so Guy is right. You can't just. Sorry, Mariv Bisman might be a good one. Yeah.
I have a question I want to ask you, Jan, but oftentimes on Shabbos when I go in the middle of nowhere and there's Chalav. Rega, let's finish this and then let's see.
No, but Guy, is that clear?
לא, כן.
Is it clear? Minhag Tov, that's a davar mefurish in Gemaras and Shulchan Aruch. If you take on a chumrah, something which is a minhag Tov. So many mishalim, so many things. You're makpid on. No, not kitnius. Kitnius is no. You can't be makpid on kitnius. An Ashkenazi has to have kitnius. No, that's not a great example. But there are examples where things which are mutter lahalacha make a din, but you're more machmir. I don't know.
על חומרה, זה בדיוק השאלה עם חומרה,
כן.
שבאדם לקח עליו, או נהג ככה, לא בגלל חומרה, הוא היה רגיל. האם עכשיו זה הפך להיות, אם זה בתורת נדר?
I'll tell you what could be a thing. So I don't know, I personally, I didn't take it on. I bli neder. I started in Gibraltar many years ago. I say Shea Shirim before Kabbalah Mincha on Friday afternoon. I'm always early in shul. I say Shea Shirim. I never took it on as a thing. Something I do. If I would want Me'ezatam Sheyiyah not to do it in the future, I would absolutely have to do Hataras Nedarim.
Even though you had the intention when you started, be neder.
So I didn't have any intention. I didn't. Yeah. So there are tanoim.
If I started at Chumrah, but when I started before that, I have the
if you say
neder, I started and
correct,
I to, right?
But I'm saying, absent any of those considerations, the concept of doing a minhag tov, starting a minhag tov, as long as it is a minhag tov, it's not a minhag shtus, and it's not just. It has to have something, an upgrade in halacha. There is an opinion to do it. There is a davar tov, and then you would stop doing it. You need Hataras Nedarim. זה דבר ברור.
שמעתי שיעור מהרב יצחק יוסף, שדיבר על אישה אשכנזייה, שהיא מדליקה קודם מברכת ומדליקה את הנרות. וכשהיא מתחתנת עם ספרדי, צריך לצאת מהמנהג הזה.
רגע.
שלא צריך אפילו, אז הוא רק מסיים, הוא אמר, לא צריך לעשות על זה התרת נדר, כי אנחנו אוחזים שזה משהו שהוא לכאורה לא נכון.
לא מקבל. First of all, let's not go into that.
Let me to finish.
I know what you're doing. Go on.
He just said, I just want to give the example, that he said that in that case, if these women will stop making the bracha, she will make it like מנהג ספרדים, she will not need to make התרת נדר, because שזה מנהג שהוא אוחז אותו בתור משהו שהוא אוחז, שהוא לא נכון, אז לא צריך לעשות את זה על התרת נדר. השאלה רק אם על החלב, שמישהו רגיל היה לשתות חלב, או אפילו אני רגיל לאכול, לא יודע, מבמבה של אוסם, עם כשרות מסוימת, ועכשיו אני אוכל ביסלי עם כשרות של מישהו אחר. האם עכשיו יש פה ירידה ברמה של הכשרות מהבמבה לביסלי, אז אני עכשיו צריך לעשות התרת נדר. השאלה היא כמה נלך רחוק עם זה.
זה צריך להיות אובייקטיבית, לא סובייקטיבית. It has to be something where it is objective and not subjective. I don't want to go into your interesting example because Rabbi Vadi Yosef's Shitta on that particular thing is a very interesting one. There's a lot of the Sfaradi Achronim don't agree with him. But Loni Kanes Liza, that's a different note. I'll tell you why that's different. My wife is Sfaradiya. She married me. Now she takes on Ashkenazi Minhagim, who said, what's the Makar of that? It's a separate, fascinating sugya, Tshuva Sorosh, so that's why it's not. But keep it simple. A regular, and also Bamba, basically, I don't know what Hechsher, let's something objectively. Ein bazeh shum safek. That if somebody is machmir, takes on a minig tov in his family, only to be makbid, only to have Chalav Yisroel, lekula alma, that is a step up in kashrus. It is a chumrah, it's not a crazy thing, it is a good thing. It's a minag tov. It's a minag tov, and therefore to change it, lekula alma would require hataras and darim. That's all. So Reb Moshe is saying two things. Okay? Reb Moshe is saying here two things. Number one, he is saying that the fact that it's gone up a bit more is even b'shas hadchak. You have to keep it. Furthermore, there's a problem with neder. So he is telling them, well, let's finish off. He seems to be telling them that they need to keep having Chalav Yisroel. That's what he seems to be saying. Uvegamal gvinois haleka heter ahu dehein asuris. There's no heter when it comes to cheese, etc. Varak mitzad shemekilin b'chalav. So it seems they started being makel there even on cheese. Wow. ולכן ודאי יש להזדרז בזה יוסה ולחזק ידי ירא השם יזברך העוסקים בזה שיסקיים החלב שתחת השגוחת ישראל בטורונטו ויסרבו חרדים לדברי התורה שיקחו חלב זה, they should buy it, and all the different things. Hashem Imela, if they all buy it, he says, then the price will go down because there'll be demand. And then it becomes economically viable, supply and demand. He gives a good business advice as well. But basically he's not prepared to be makel. And finally, the very last point I wanted to get to is one of Rav Moshe's big Talmidim, a big posek in his own right, Rabbi Ephraim Greenblatt, Zatzal, Rivavos Ephraim, and this is our final tshuva on this subject, and there's so much more to say, but just Rabbi Ephraim Greenblatt from Memphis, Tennessee, very famous posek, Talmud Muvak of Rav Moshe. This is in Chelek Ches of his Tshuvas Rivavos Ephraim, Siman Yudalef. So he's asked a question from Mexico in 97, and the question is, Siman Yudalef, about somebody who wants to know about drinking coffee with tefillin on, but he starts off, Ois Aleph, Bidvar she'elosoi b'cholav akum, shemoiri v'rebi agon, Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal hitir, ha'im ef shelahokel gamkein achrei sherobu b'hachsherim. In Mexico, you can get Chalav Yisroel. Can you say this kula also in Mexico? Maybe there's no nemolas to the memshala. L'shachedei sambamama in Mexico is a bit more of a. It's not quite. It's the Wild West. Whatever. Nira. Dibimekoi mois shesayver sheyeh Chalav Yisroel. Os bevadai mishagar shom tzorich leheshtamish b'Chalav Yisroel. If you can get hold of Chalav Yisroel avada, you have to have Chalav Yisroel v'heta shel moiri v'Rabbi Zatzal hu b'mkoimes she'i efshel lahasigoy as ma shehitir b'sifroi b'mkoimes elu adayin nishara heta. So places he writes that he's writing in the Das of Rav Moshe, and this is consistent with what we have seen in these other Tshuvas in Rav Moshe, published and unpublished, that the heta that Rav Moshe gave was for places where you can't get Chalav Yisroel. So he is, as one of the Talmidim Muvhakim of Reb Moshe, he is confirming this was the das of his Rebbe, that only for places where you can't get Chalav Yisroel. Ve'etzlechem she'ef shel shachid b'momoin im keina eina heter shel murtam, or means mirtas. As lechura d'meri v'Rebbe yo'isel ishtamish. He says, I think that my Rebbe would, because there is corruption, the level of corruption in Mexico where you can bribe them, etc. He says, therefore, I think even Rav Moshe, even if there wasn't Chalav Yisroel, you wouldn't be able to be, Rav Moshe wouldn't be mekel. I'll call upon him, therefore, the Yesh Rabim Chashuvim Etzlechem, and ask them. Ubesefer Kashas Lalocha L'Didi Vanunu Hebi Haba Achronim Directly Ktanim Hutzele Chalav Akum. This is the last thing I want to say on the subject. Let's summarize it. So let's summarize what we have seen. because, and I think it was important, and I'm really pleased that I know it's the last shir in the series, unfortunately. You have your summer semester, and we'll see each other again in the next Zmanim Yetz Hashem, and we have to decide whether we continue this. I've got a lot more to say. We can go on and I want to do maybe just one final point.
We didn't see the Chiddush of OU to make his lechatchila.
Well, let's come. We didn't come to that yet, but certainly in Rav Moshe, yes, absolutely, certainly, Rav Moshe, it is very clear. Let's just summarize this as follows. We have seen very, very clearly from that Rav Moshe, yes, he did hold that government supervision, even if the fines are not terrible, it would be mutter where there is proper. There's those countries where there is proper government supervision. We can question what they are, but certainly where there are proper democratic governments with reasonable, you can probably say most of the European Union, and where there are real laws and they are enforced, even if the fines are not punitive and they're not huge, but that would be good enough me'ikah hadin. However, it is equally clear, and I think this is really important and really needs to be stressed. So many times you hear people saying, they'll have a Mars bar even if they live in New York or somewhere. You want to have a Mars bar or whatever it is in New York, and it's Chalav Stam, don't use Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe would not allow you to do it. Even if you were not a Ben Torah, it's very clear where there is the availability of Chalav Yisroel products, Rav Moshe would absolutely not be, in practice, he would not allow it. And that is a very important point which I feel is often missed. Much more to say. And maybe I'll just finish off with this one thing, just to throw not a spanner in the works, but Rav Goldschmidt, Shlita, said when he took his position in Moscow in 93, which was 2 years before Reb Shlomo Zalman was nifta, he went and he asked Reb Shlomo Zalman whether the Baalei Tshuva in Russia could rely on the Igros Moshe to drink the local milk. And Reb Shlomo Zalman reportedly told him, as long as there is a law on the books in Russia that milk must be from cows, people could drink the milk. And he wrote Baalei Tshuva, and there is some discussion as to the parameters of that, it's a really interesting thing. I'm going to ask him myself, and that gets into an interesting discussion. But just to finish on that note, Shkoyach, thank you so much.